So, thank you. Thank you. The name of this is called Transmen, Breaking Boundaries. Alright, y'all ready to educate
Yeah,
the world?
I'm ready.
Y'all
Thank
ready
you.
to talk about that tough stuff?
Yeah, I'm
Get
ready.
it going? Okay. Let the world know a little bit about yourselves if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'll go. I don't even have to look down. My name is Elias. I'm 27 years old. I'm first generation Mexican Peruvian, and yeah, there's a lot about me, but I feel like I don't know. I'm born in California, raised out here. I think some of the stuff we're gonna talk about, I feel like I've thought a lot about as well, like throughout my life. But I work with youth right now, which is really dope, and I love it. I'm in school too, and I'm hoping to get my BA like soon to keep working with youth. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. I'm 27, so
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
There's nothing wrong
yeah,
with that.
but
I'm still figuring it out too. There's nothing wrong with
it's
that.
it's all a journey. I'm like want to do a lot of things. Like I'm still trying to get on that part of my life where I'm in my late 20s. I need to like figure some stuff out. But yeah, I'm living out here in LA. Been out here for like almost 2 years. I'm from Orange County, so it's not too far, but it feels like worlds away. Like it's like that. It's like an hour away, but it's like still so close. But like it's been an experience. I've never lived in the city. I like grew up in the suburbs, so for this is like a whole new world for me. Like, and I just moved closer to. I just moved to downtown, so it even feels more city. And I'm like, oh shit, dude, I'm not used to this at all. But it's cool. It's cool, and I appreciate you allowing me to be here.
I appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
As someone who's lived in multiple different counties of California,
Yeah.
it's definitely different worlds. It's different worlds for sure.
Yeah.
All right, Anthony Daniel. Let him know about that beautiful voice you got too. Expose that too.
Wow. So yeah, my name is Anthony Daniel. Pronouns are he, him, and his. I am 30 and 30. Sort of 30. I'm still figuring myself out. Definitely have a lot going for me. I have a long list. I think I sent over like 20 organizations.
Yeah.
Just about that. I have either ties, affiliations, alumni, or something with. But aside from all that, I am a professional singer with the Trans Chorus of Los Angeles, and I've been doing that for about 5 years now and some change. I am a Trans Advisory Board member as a city commissioner for the city of West Hollywood, so that's pretty cool because I just started that. I got sworn in. It was interesting. There's a lot of people who I've seen previously do the sworn in, they like slip up on the word awful or lawful, there you go. And trying to get that correctly, I remember like I was looking deep into the eyes of the person that I had to swear this into, and I got every single word right, which was great. So I'm happy that I was able to show that, like, even in the face of being nervous, I was able to, I got this. Aside from that, I'm also a drag performer for Club Delicious and Epic Lounge. So hopefully we can head out there later tonight.
I'm down. I'm down for sure. Alrighty. So the first question or the number one topic that I want to talk about is just what I feel doesn't get talked about enough, especially in the BIPOC community, is the coming out story. I mean, there's some people who it's easy and they have that support system where they come out for, during this. But I know, my personal experience as a black man, it was, I didn't really have that comfort or in that safety to actually come out in a safe space. Mm-hmm. And I mean, even now, I'm not even gonna lie, the amount of trans individuals that I know, even as long as I've been transitioning for 16 years, mm-hmm. I can count on one hand. But that's because I made the decision to live stealth because mm-hmm. I didn't necessarily have that support and that community, or really know where to fit in the community to actually feel like I had a brotherhood and a sisterhood of trans people that could support me. Mm-hmm. How is that for y'all? How was it for y'all as people of color? Like, mm-hmm. was it easy? How did you find your support?
Yeah, at least for me, I feel like, and I'm speaking my experience, I'm Latino, Latinx, first generation, so kind of like not even understanding like the world of that existing, like of trans people existing, even queer people. Like I feel like people of color that are queer are really marginalized, because it's even like, and something about it just seems like even more like hidden. Like I never, like the queer people I did know of were always like white, and I talk about like where I grew up, because I grew up in a really white, like predominantly white area, like very like South Orange County, like suburbs, like conservative. So I was constantly surrounded by white folk, and like there's queer folk there too, but they're always white. And in my family, it was kind of like, I was really fortunate that my family like came around and like accepted the idea. I think at first they were very like, there's this very culture of like machismo culture, like that's like this toxic masculinity within like Latin Latino men. It's like you gotta be tough, you're a man, you gotta do this, all the stereotypical stuff. So I feel like I was surrounded a lot by that, and I still see it on a day-to-day basis, you know. But I grew up in a matriarchy, so I feel like it kind of like changed things. Like there weren't men around in my family, like my little brothers, but like there's like no older men, so it was kind of like it just felt like a weird place. I'm the oldest and like with my siblings, and it was just, yeah, like I think it was a really interesting experience for like my family to first come to terms that I was like queer, because I came out like multiple times. Like I was like, oh, I'm queer first, and then they were kind of like, okay, yeah, I could see that, and I'm like, oh, I'm trans, and they're like, they're like, hold on, like I'm not, like what is that, like you want to be a man, like you want a penis, and I was like, whoa, I was like, that's not even about that, like let's just get the first thing first, you know, I'm just dressing more masculine, different name, you know. So I feel like that was like a really big change for them, and I feel like I'm still struggling with like, because I'm half Mexican, half Peruvian, and I'm closer to my Peruvian side, which is like my maternal side, but like my dad's side I'm not close to at all, and I'm still struggling with like coming out. Like I've like, it's been hard just because they're so much more traditional than I am, and they're traditional like in religion and like gender roles, so like I'm like constantly like misgendered or dead named when I'm with them, and I feel like at the time when I was first coming out that was like way too much. Now I'm in a better place for that, but it's still like hard for them to like wrap their ideas, because like growing up all the older Latinos that I knew were very like, this is how men are supposed to be, this is how women are supposed to be, and there's nothing else, you know. You can't be anything else, or you're like, if you're too feminine as a man, you're like gay, or if you're too masculine as a woman, you're gay too. So it's like this like weird, you know, double-edged sword. But that's kind of how I experienced it. I don't know if you felt that too, being are you Latino?
Yeah, so
Okay.
I'm Black and Mexican. So that's, wow, that's wild. I'm sorry. I feel like I was like born into this world with like a lot of odds against me. My biological father didn't want to accept that I was his, even though I very clearly look like him, which is kind of shocking that I ended up finding out as, you know, early as like what, 2 years ago. I ended up finding out what he looked like finally. And I was like, fuck, we do look the same. No wonder my mom was always mad at me. But so yeah, I was already born with that against me of not being the correct color, you know, as the rest of my cousins or my siblings. Most like I have one uncle who's kind of my color. I get my blackness from my biological father, so there's blackness in his family. But because I didn't know him, I didn't really like get the chance to know how to like be in my culture, you know, or like, so I grew up culturally Mexican, you know, speaking Spanish. Spanish is my first language. And so growing up a little brown girl, right, I was like the only like rural like person of color like myself for a while. Like in my kindergarten picture too, I remember I showed one to my friends because they thought I was kidding, and I was like, no, I'm not kidding. As a matter of fact, I remember, I know this is crazy as a memory that I have, but I do remember the day that we took that school picture for like when I was like 5 years old. But I remember they were like, oh, to some of the people look this way, and to the rest of them they were saying they look this way. So in the picture I can remember looking at, I'm like, I'm still pretty. I remember how cute I was no matter what, because of the fact that like my energy was always there. One thing that I didn't mention earlier is that like because of the fact that like I was born under such circumstances, My mom was originally going to name me Holly Ann. She ended up naming me Amanda Victoria. So nowadays, now I'm 30, and I actually use that as my stage name. So I'm using what most people would say their dead name, their legal name, their birth name, whatever. I use it as my stage name because of the fact that I think I don't know. My mom wasn't. I don't know what her what maybe she saw, but she always told me too that the day that you were born, like there was something different about you. Like when you open your eyes, and she's like, you looked at me, just you were always different. So growing up, 5 years old, being different in a school, like I used to get, really like bullied by quite a few people. There was one boy in particular who used to beat the shit out of me because the teacher used to say like, oh, boys will be boys, and it's funny because now I'm a boy and I'm like, I would never beat on no little girl. Like, the fuck. And the thing is that nobody believed me because I was a person of color and he was white. And he ended up hitting my cousin one time. My cousin, because she was constantly moved in and out of schools, she turned around and she was like, okay, this is real. This is actually happening, to me, and it's a daily life for me. And so it was like once or twice for her, And that happened and carried out all the way until about 4th grade. But during that time frame, like I had already known that I was different in my queerness because of the fact that like I was just different. And even the teachers knew that. I remember like they used to tell me too, and they used to always say shit about my curly hair too, like, oh, it's so pretty, I wish my hair was like that. So like I used to get constantly told things like that, like, oh, your textured hair, I wish I had it, or there's something different about it. And I remember for like crazy hair days and stuff like that, they used to make afros look like that was crazy hair. And so like I remember that was like what I grew up with, in like how I respected being in the black community, is there was no respect. You didn't. You had, I don't think I've ever had a teacher who was a person of color. Have I? No.
You've never had a teacher that's a person of color?
I've had one male teacher. The rest of them are like females. Throughout my entire life, I've never had any representation. I've always been the darker one. I've always been the more different one. The one who thinks like more creatively. So around 6 or 7, I want to say, is when they bought me like when they first figured out that like I could play piano. So I have a musical talent, and that's something that they found out pretty early on. To me, in my brain, the way that I process things is like it's like that game where you flip cards over, like that memory card game. And so my parents, used to see beauty in me. They used to see that I was different, but they used to see beauty in me, and so they was just like, okay, as long as you're not hurting anybody, And that was just always like in my character. I remember when my aunts was telling me like, oh, you've just always been timid, which is ironic because like I'm very outgoing. But so you fast forward until I was like 14 years old when I'm figuring out my my sexuality, right? So there was a girl who I remember, she was telling me that she's like, oh, that I like boys and I like girls. And I said, that's a thing. Because I had already had my first boyfriend at like 12 years old. And I lost my virginity that same year. So like, it wasn't like technically taken from me. So it was the boy, he had a bet with his older brother, right? That he could be the youngest one to lose it. Again, boys, like my entire life too, masculinity has always been something that has been like, what the fuck is your problem? You beat up on girls, and then you like to have sex with like little 12-year-old girls too, just so you could prove a point. God, you're awful. And I look
that whole part of masculine culture even now needs to be addressed and fixed, so that you're more masculine men, and representation is positive representation and of how to be. I want little girls when I have kids. I don't want boys. I don't want that type of conversation. They could come home talking about some craziness like that. I'm like, listen. No, but go ahead.
So I ended up realizing like, oh, okay, so bisexuality exists. So I actually came out first as bisexual because I didn't really think that it was right for me to say, oh, I'm specifically a lesbian, right? That I only specifically like girls, right? Because of the fact that I already had sex with a boy, and I was, I guess, with him. But no, I had my first girlfriend at like, I think I was like 16 years old. And it was really complicated coming out, especially in the school that I did. So the school that I came out in, one of the more popular persons back then was like the most openly like queer, like back then they were like openly lesbian, right? And so I remember being like, okay, so like if you can be this way, you know, like I can be this way too. So like I was really fascinated by like how they live their life. They were well to do for themselves, you know. They were the marching band head person. They were in like the girls, you know, varsity, you know, soccer team and all of that. So like they were very well liked, you know. And I remember that like throughout that entire junior and part of my senior year, like they bullied the fuck out of me. And like that was mostly just because of the fact that, again, like I think what their issue was is that like I whatever I was challenged their existence, you know.
And now, what do you mean by that? And the fact that as a person of color, that's what
In the way of queerness, I think like when you're in high school, you have so many people who are trying to judge you and be like, "Are you even queer? Is this just a phase? You're just trying me. You're just making shit up," you know. Yeah. So when you're at that point and you're just like trying to figure yourself out, you're looking for what little representation there is. And I'm sorry that I found it in a white person who really had no idea what the fuck my life was and what I was going through. And eventually, you know, they got me basically kicked out of the school, which was really shitty, because I had just turned 18 at that point, and they were trying to be like, oh, it's not because you're queer.
Oh yeah, I got kicked out of school too. It was a hate crime, but at the time, you know, my mom really didn't realize that it was a hate crime. They wanted to jump me because there were so many girls that liked me, and apparently I was turning all these girls out because they liked me and wanted to be with me.
Whoa.
And my whole thing was I wasn't even tripping. I didn't even care. I was trying to go to lunch, go to the cafeteria, and all that. They trying to fight me. Then my best friend at the time, she's like, "You just gonna keep letting them say all that about?" I don't give a damn. I'm gonna get me some chicken wings from downstairs right now. I'm trying to get to lunch. I turn around and she's like Superman swinging at people, and then all of a sudden I'm thrown into it. And the end result was, you know, because they were like saying that it was a sin and everything I was doing was a sin and bringing, you know, religion and all of this into it. And the next thing, you know, I'm because you weren't just about to whoop my ass, so I started whooping people's ass and was throwing desks and shit. And I ended up getting kicked out and expelled because I didn't let them whoop my ass. I beat their ass. For sure. And so they ended up with bruises and blood and shit. And they wanted to charge me with assault with a deadly weapon. And my mom was like,
yikes.
And I was like, I didn't have a weapon. And then apparently when you're stumping people's face in with your feet, it's considered assault, because I was definitely stumping people's face in.
Dang. How many people?
It was 3 girls and 2 guys.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's kind of like self-defense, honestly, more than a attack. I don't know.
And that's what I'm saying. But then when there was a couple of people who recorded it, and so the video showed me whooping it. It didn't show them coming at me first. Yeah. It showed me whooping their ass, and so I ended up being the one kicked out of school and expelled. And you know, my mom. But it, like, you know, when I talk about it now with my mom. And because, again, there wasn't really much representation. Like, you're talking about representation even back then in school. And this was, like, early 2000s, 2001, 2002. I don't even think Ellen DeGeneres had came out at that point. Yeah. It was even being gay. So, you know, limited representation. People, because they don't know it, they feel the need that they want to sit there and judge you because it's unknown to them. And, I mean... Speaking on representation right now, even in today's day and age right now, how do y'all feel representation is? Like, do you feel like we have an adequate amount with the new stuff? I mean, y'all seen Disclosure, right? Or like, do you feel like it's getting better, or do you feel like it's only happening because of what happened in 2020 and people can actually ignore the things that were happening anymore?
I feel like when you're talking about like trans representation,
like all of it, like trans representation and just like especially BIPOC individuals, like all of that. I mean, because you know, when looking at commercials, I see blended families in commercials now, and that's cool to see.
I feel like they're trying so hard for diversity. I'm like, was that needed? I'm like, it doesn't even seem realistic.
That's the thing. Like, I feel like it's sort of forced at this point. And like, sure. I like it and I want it to continue, but at the same time, I feel like you're just sort of forcing it.
You want it to be natural.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem natural anymore.
I feel you, dude. I feel that. I would see commercials and I'm like, whoa. I'm like, I feel like they're purposely trying to make this family multicultural, like out of nowhere, and I'm just like, I feel like it is realistic, but I also feel like it kind of, I think when like big brands do it, it's like they're doing it because they know that's like the narrative that like is happening. It doesn't feel like as, and it's like a capitalistic thing, so it's like it doesn't feel as genuine, you know. But I think when it comes back to representation, and I think about like queer representation, trans representation with people of color, I feel like it's not like there yet. Like I feel like there's like queer shows and trans shows and like they're all like white queers and white trans people, and I'm just like I'm like no, I'm like I can't even relate to that at all. So
I mean, even the L word, you had Kit, which was the only one black sister, but then Tasha at the end, towards the end of this season, the only other black person.
Yeah.
And then you had Bet, who was half white, half black.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah.
Like, and there wasn't really much. But then, I mean, I haven't really seen the new generation of
that one. Still doesn't have like, they have like an Asian guy who's like trans on it. He's like the only trans mask on the show. I think there's other, but they might not be like out and open about it. And then besides that, it's mostly white like centered. Like it usually is. Like I feel like, and when I think about like West Hollywood and areas like that, like super white centered, super like still like cis, and it's cis, but like a lot of queer people, but they're all cis. So it's kind of like the vibes there. I could never like, it just never felt comfortable for me because I feel like, you know, I have this whole experience of being like, yeah, I'm trans, but at the same time like I'm like a person of color. So I have like a big experience that like a lot of folks like that can't relate, even when we're in trans spaces and there's other trans people, but they're white, and I'm just like, you're seen as like this white guy who has the highest privilege in society,
right? Exactly.
And I'm seen as like a man of color, and it's like I'm like threatening at times, you know. So it's kind of like we still have different battles, and they're like, oh, we're the same, we're like brothers, and I'm like, we're not actually.
And I mean, I've always wondered that because, like I said, I don't really talk to or know too many trans individuals, and you know, I see the ones on social media that's like well known and everything, and I look at what they post and what they talk about, and it's just like you're really just sort of focused on the white aspect of it. Like you're not exactly sort of including everyone that's in the trans community, especially trans people of color who have it so much harder than what you do. I mean, because the thing is, as someone who is white and trans, the moment that they feel they're completely done with their transition, they can easily just disappear into the world and not have to worry about anything else.
Absolutely.
Whereas, you know, trans people of color, such as ourselves, we still will always have to have eyes in the back of our head worrying about something. Like, I don't think there's no space that is actually ever really going to fully be safe for us to be in.
It's like kind of like I think about it where I'm like, okay, am I safe to be like trans here in a space? And it's like, well, I'm like the only brown person here, you know. It's like, oh shit, like I gotta think about like two things at the same time. And then like I feel like at times like I can come off as feeling like, or I feel like I can be read as queer at times, and as like a man of color, it's like, oh shoot, you gotta like, I gotta be careful like who I do that around, because it kind of like, I don't know, like I've been in situations where it's just kind of like they just look at you different, like they might want to size you up or just be like straight up hate crime you because you're gay. Like it's not even anymore that you're trans, it's just because you're feminine or you're queer. But I like that you bring that up because it's something I was thinking about a lot, like in regards to like trans like influencers and like these YouTubers, and like honestly like what was like representation for me to even figure out I was trans, or all these white trans people doing it. But like, and now I'm getting to a point where it's like frustrates me because they like get all this attention. It's like they get all these brand deals. Exactly.
It's like you don't have too many black or Latino trans guys who can do that freely without having to worry about what the heck is going to happen on the other side. And I mean, and again, like this is the whole purpose of why I want to talk to individuals like this, so that it's voiced more, so that there are individuals, because there isn't really much representation. I mean, the first representation that I saw for myself when I first when I realized I was trans, you know, at 15, it was a internet dating downlink. And it was a black trans guy on there, and then when I started like doing more research and looking into it, every other person that I saw on YouTube was white.
Right. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
I think there was only one other. There was one other black trans guy, Caden.
Caden Blue?
No, Caden. I think his Instagram is Caden Official, something like that. And I mean, and he's known for carrying his children. He had two babies that he carried. But he's the only other trans guy that I know that's been trans about as long as I have been, and you know, was out about it. And you know, kudos him, bravery, because he even talks about giving birth to his two little girls, which I think is awesome. But then you still have people even still who who even judge that or talk about that, and you know, I don't even really want to imagine what he has to go through as a trans man of color, and being forthcoming about the fact that he carried his 2 little girls, because you got the rest of mainstream society who thinks that it's wrong, as if trans people can't have babies in general. Like, are we not allowed to have a family? Can we not freaking decide how we want to make a family happen? What was the first representation for you that you saw when you as trans identified?
Trans bono, but I remember that there was like, I forgot which, it was like the Pokemon game, I forgot which one it was, that's when I started realizing that, like, I used to choose the boy option, and I used to start choosing the boy option as early as, like, I don't know, I think like 9, maybe 10.
I used to do that too.
Yeah, like that was something that was like, you know, when I had somebody who was like the first trans person near to me, ironically was that same person I was talking about earlier. So it was hard because, like, eventually we did become friends again, or we did become friends. I think we were being friends again. But anyways, he came out first as being trans, and he was like, "Oh, I'm not a lesbian." I remember that he messaged me and was just like, I'm a trans man. Is that cool with you?" And in that moment, I was, I think, like 19, 20 at that point, and I remember thinking like, "Oh, you know, that's you know, good for you. I kind of already saw that coming, you know." But for myself, I remember thinking throughout my entire life, I can't let go of my femininity. I just can't. I like her. I like myself. I like the girl that I have been. And so in that moment, I remember when I still had my long hair, I remember being like, I can't get rid of it because, you know, it'll go away, you know, that feeling of being able to look at myself in the mirror and feel, you know, my cuntiest self, you know. And I remember that the thing that made me the most dysphoric was that, like, it always felt like there was 2 parts of me that I had to kind of fight with, and one of them was that masculinity in me that I had always felt comfortable with, right? So, like, I had always known that was there. Again, as early as that, you know, like 9, 10 years old, you know, I would always choose boy options. And then I remember there was this one website called, like, Gaia Online, and you got to choose, you know, what your character was going to be. And I remember there too, like, I would just always choose the boy option. And sometimes, you know, filling out that F, you know, the little female square, has always been like confusing for me, because it just doesn't, like, even though I love my femininity, right, it's not me. I'm this, you know. I'm me now, right? I'm me now that I can go out into society and you know, be this way. Where I personally hate when people, you know, like, the word stealth just is, like, not for me. It's I'd rather die out in the street. If somebody's gonna shoot me, that's fine with me. I've been assaulted so many different times for so many different reasons. Don't tell my mom. I don't want to give her nightmares. But I have been I've gone through a lot, you know, since as early as I can remember. So going through that as a teenager, and then as an adulthood, where, you know, now I figured out my gender around, like, 22, right? When I was just like, okay, you know, years has passed and I'm trying to figure out who I am. I chopped off my hair for the first time, and that was the only time that I ever had to chop it all off, where I felt, wow, oh my god, that first time I looked in my mirror, and, like, I was like, I had short hair, and it was like, so like this is actually not that far different from, like, my very first haircut, actually. So this is me, you know. And so going out, if, like, in my head, you know, since as early as I can remember, I was always going to be, you know, odds against being bullied for not being this or that, or cool with the kids, or whatever. There were still people that I was cool with. I'm very fortunate and blessed to have even been able to live the life that I have. But that being said, I feel like when I see toxic versions of what I guess I'm supposed to be, it really irritates me, because I think that you could live like me. Anybody could live like me. you could live a really hard life and have housing and have a car and have 4 cats and live a life where you get to sing on stage with amazing other performers, that you get to just be you and in your most authentic form. And you saying earlier too that you're like, oh, I only knew like a handful of trans people. That breaks my heart, because I know so many.
I feel like I can relate to that, honestly.
No,
Like,
there's a few.
yeah, definitely, like, in person. Like, I think something you said, we're talking about, like, being stealth, like, something you don't like or you can't be.
I don't want to be.
And I feel like I have, like, really big respect for, like, trans people that are open, because I truly think that, like, without them, like, I wouldn't have, like, been able to figure out who I was. Like, I know I work with I know some trans people that are, like, really open and proud, and for me, I'm like, I feel like they have, like, so much, like, courage and strength
Yeah, they
to
do.
like be out there and be in the forefront and be like, hey, like, I'm trans and like this, and I'm like, damn, like, that's not me though. Like, I feel like I have a harder time doing that. Like, I also live, like, much more stealth, like, than I feel like I want to, but I feel like it comes with, like, safety, and it comes with, like, peace of mind, where I'm like, I don't want to be asked questions, I don't want to be looked at, I don't want to be treated any differently. But I think some of that can be rooted in, like, my own, like, inner transphobia, where I'm just like, fuck, like why would they treat me any different? Like, why is being, it's like a whole, like, thing I do in my head.
Though, like, even within the own trans community, there's still a lot of people who are really confused. I know that for myself,
sure.
like, you know, I am the way I am, right?
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and I can be in community and people be like, okay, but then if you were a girl, why do you want to do girl drag?
Mhm.
And I'm sitting there like, no, you don't understand.
Mhm.
It's you gotta, like, see that, like, I guess, like, the kid in you that grew up
Mhm.
being like, what am I gonna be one day? Like, at no point have I ever thought that anyone ever thought to themselves, I want to be miserable. I want life to treat me super fucking awful. I want everything to go wrong, for my family to hate me, want to kick me out, and then I can't even be my most authentic self. And so,
Right, yeah.
you know, I'm fortunate that I could be in spaces where I know, goddamn, so many people, so many. I literally met you at that event where I'm just like, again, I know more than half that room, where I'm just sitting there like, yeah, even though there were some people there that, like, don't necessarily like me and have also said a lot of awful things about me, there was still a significant amount of people there who were like, yes, you know, you are living your best life, and that everyone's just there enjoying themselves, because, you know, no one has to worry about, you know, being, I guess, truly judged. You know, you're gonna still have, like, some judgments here, and shade is real.
I feel like I feel like I've been in trans spaces where I'm like, I can be out, and, like, I feel like I know who to disclose with when I feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Like, but, like, in my workspace now, like, I'm not, like, out as trans. Like, I think I let, like, 2 people know, because, like, I felt like I had that connection with them, and I feel like I was talking about it with my other trans friend, who's, like, my only other trans friend I have in, like, real life. Like, I have some friends online, but, like, he's the only one, like, and we both kind of started transitioning together, like, same time, like, 6 years ago. So, like, we've been, like, we've seen each other through a lot, and he's, like, a really big support system of mine. And he's also, like, I would say he's like, half white, half Asian, so I feel like we kind of have that, like, outlook on life when it comes to, like, being of color.
Yeah.
But, like, I talked to him how, like, sometimes, like, when I'm talking to people at work or new people, especially at work, because I spend so much time there and I work with youth, and I feel like it's hard to, like, disclose things about myself without outing myself or, like, explaining more, because one of my kids that I work with, he's at high school, he's like, oh, I want to see a picture of you in high school. And I'm like, no, you don't. I'm like, I would look freaking different. Like, trust, like, I'm like, would look like a dead-ass girl, and you'd be like, what the fuck? You know? Like, shit like that. So it's just, like, I feel like I can't fully...
Like sorry, I do. I love getting...
I feel like if I had, like, honestly, like, the guts to do it, I would, but I'm like, oh, fuck, no. I'm like, oh, I don't have any pictures of me in high school. I'm like, I don't know where they went, you know, make up some bullshit. But I feel like it's hard to, like, for me to feel fully close to anybody unless I, like, disclose that. So I feel like that's why I did with, like, certain coworkers. But, like, at the rest of work, I'm kind of like, if I don't need to, I don't have to. But there's another person there that's non-binary, and they're very, like, out about it. Like, I'm non-binary. Like, they have, like, all these flags in their room, and they're they, them. And they're like, I'm like, hell yeah, you go. Like, I love that for you. I'm like, for me personally, no, but for you, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, that's how it was for me. Like, I was cool just being behind the scenes, living stealth, and, you know, supporting, you know, from behind the scenes. And even at, you know, at the event, Like that was my first time really being surrounded by that many trans individuals. And so initially when I got in there, I felt a little bit uncomfortable because it's not anything that I was used to, and so I had to figure out exactly why it was that I felt uncomfortable in the beginning, and it's because. And I love everything that's trans beautiful. Trans is beautiful, but it was just that's not anything that I knew.
Right.
It was so foreign to me, and as someone that's trans, to be in a setting like that, as beautiful as it was, but to still feel a bit disconnected and not a part of it. And then, I realized it's because I lived my life as stuff. And I purposely chose not to really connect to that part because all I really wanted to focus on was just getting to this point of my male identity and being the man that I wanted to be. That I purposely stayed away from that. Then as the night went on, I felt better. Like I felt internally getting happier inside being in that space, because then at the same time I realized I don't have to worry about anything.
Right, yeah.
These people are just like me.
Yeah.
Like I'm this right now, and especially because it was predominantly brown and black people.
Yeah, that's dope.
This is a safe space. It felt like a safe space, and it felt good. And it towards the end of the night, that's why I told you I'm still hanging around to help out if anything, because I felt good. Like that feeling.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like it's just I come from that world. Like I spent so like when I went through my beginning of my gender transition, like I'm very fortunate. I got to be living at the Los Angeles LGBT Center, so like I got to go through testosterone and have an actual doctor there who believed me and didn't have to struggle with me. I mean, I had others throughout my life that I had to struggle with, and even ones after her. She's still my doctor, but like it's complicated. Anyways, point is that like I'm fortunate, right, that I'm in this position. I'm super unfortunate that my testosterone situation is a little bit like on and off right now. That's not her fault. Anyways, my point is that it hurts my heart that like, there's like this one place that I've gone to, right? That I remember I was telling one of my friends that I've gone there like it's like 3 or 4 different times to go buy food. And I don't know what possessed me the very first time that I did not have my little right? I always have at least something reminiscent of being, visibly trans as, people would if they were trying to be like, represent of what they are, with whatever flag they have. So I try to have mine, but I didn't have it. So the guys there, I remember that they were barking at some girls, and I was just like, I don't know, possessed me to be like, I'm going to mimic this. And for about 2 seconds I did, and I don't know what made me feel kind of good to feel included with the guys that I would never give a chance to. But because it's just, I don't know, it's just like a weird territory to be like masculine, right? And I remember since then, right, I said I've gone times after, I hide my thing, and I don't know why. And I think it's because going back there and being seen as not trans to these guys who are like, hey, and they and I lower my voice, and I bring it down 10 notches, and I don't know why I do it when every single time I leave that situation, the moment feels good, but when I leave it, I feel awful. I feel sick to my stomach, actually. The food is fucking delicious. And that's why I go back. But but the feeling of just, I don't know why. It's like a weird, like, have you ever felt that? Like,
yeah, no, I have, and having to conform to fit into what the societal norms and not being able to be yourself. Like and I felt that before, and I mean,
it's like you're being yourself, but you're not yourself, but you're not being yourself, but you kind of are yourself. It's so complicated.
It is. I mean, I've been in situations where people even say stuff about trans people, and I don't say anything. I just walk away because it's like, worried about whether or not I'm going to be outing myself if I speak up, and then what ramifications come with that. And and I feel like shit. Not being able to sit there and stand up for who I am, because pretty much you're saying shit about who the fuck I am, but I can't even stand up about it to even say I probably want to punch you in your throat right now because you sound like a fool.
Yeah.
But I gotta, I don't want, at the time I didn't want the world to know that I'm trans, and I don't, the worried about what's going to happen because we are still violence against trans people is still at a goddamn high,
Right,
and
yeah.
the hate crimes have risen 80% since last year. So it's like it's the hate is still out there, and it's actually getting stronger.
Yeah.
And but I don't want to just continue to feel like shit because I'm not doing anything about it. I want to figure out what the hell I can do to stop that hate and to even get more trans people to stand up, speak out, and make a make a difference. I mean, you got Laverne Cox, and she's out there killing it. She's killing it. And that she took that moment of fame from Orange is the New Black, and she fucking is killing the world out here. She the interviews that she'll be having, she's making the change, the necessary change. But then you don't have as many BIPOC trans individuals, enough of us out there doing that,
right?
And having the opportunity to do that, to voice any of it, to share any of it, to make a difference in any of it.
But it's kind of hard because, like you said earlier too, like I said earlier too, like you have, like, for myself, I had the odds stacked against me, but for trans individuals, yourself, you have, I don't think I've ever met a single trans person who had it as simple as they're like, oh, okay, I can just be trans and I'm okay with it, and my family was okay with it from, like, the very beginning. There's some families that, like, obviously were. My family eventually came around, but I think that came with the territory of being like, okay, I actually did something with myself and I didn't come back. Even though I did have, like, drug addiction issues, and I've been sober, which I'm very proud of myself for, like, I wasn't, somewhere in a position where even when I was even at my lowest, I wasn't, I never gave up. I always kept fighting. So it's just crazy, like, that things are the way they are, that there isn't, enough trans representation in media when there's so many amazing stories to choose from. Like, there's, you have my story, you have your story, you have, every single person in that room that you saw has a story, and us within ourselves and within community, we can have our own discrepancies with each other, we can have our own rapport with one another, whether it be good or bad, but we know each other. And I know that if there was something awful that is going to happen, like, I could knowingly look at that next person and be like, I will protect you, I will make sure you're safe, because no matter what our discrepancy is, I won't let anything hurt you, and, like, I've been through situations where, again, like, within our own trans community, where you will have, discrepancies with people who have, like, severe misunderstandings, or just that fear of, like, people giving up on themselves, and then, you end up with, bodies on the line. I know that earlier, this year, one of my friends committed suicide, and she was a trans Latina woman, and losing her was so hard because her loss was a fentanyl overdose. So, and she was a community member, and seeing her not even get recognized by the community, I remember that I was really upset when I didn't see her picture on the ofrenda, and I still didn't see it. I went back searching for it like a madman, just trying to find my friend, because amongst all those people who I have seen slain out on the streets, who I was never friends with, but I know, or, representations of being trans lives to somebody else, I couldn't see my friend who was a representation of a trans life to me. So, again, in our own community, we still have our own shit, but, like, I feel like there's still a way for us to figure it out and present our rest of the world with, like, a good, positive, representation that you could be, no matter from what circumstance you came from, you can overcome that. You can be better. You can do more. You can always do.
But now, how do we do that though? How do we show the rest of the world? How do we show white people and cisgendered individuals that trans people of color in our community that we're in, that we're building, that it's possible to accept us to hear us out, hear our story, and there might be something in their story that they can possibly relate to, that they can learn from, that we can sort of join together, and as one we can be better. Like, we can all be better together. We can all make this a very equitable country.
Yeah.
Like, how do you feel we can actually make that happen? I mean, because I don't know.
I feel like there has to be, like, efforts in general to be like more inclusive of spaces, and also like I think like the world. I feel like there's just like huge. There just has to be like a big emphasis on being like anti-racist and like tackling like colorism and stuff, even within like the BIPOC community. Like
Yeah.
that's like a real thing, especially with Latinos. So I feel like that has to happen where like you need to be in spaces like, and personally for me I think you need to be in spaces that are like radical and like want people of color to be uplifted and to be at the forefront and to like give them their flowers, because a lot of like the reason why like these white trans people have like rights and visibility is because of like black trans women. So
100%.
yeah, exactly.
The entire gay revolution was because of trans women of color.
Exactly, and I feel like they don't get that respect or that representation at all, and I feel like it's giving them that kind of like moment to like be in the forefront, uplift them, hear their stories, like you said, like stories matter, like hearing their stories, having them be like, and I'm just thinking of like media and stuff, instead of like casting like a white trans guy, like why don't you do like a black trans guy, or like someone of color. Like it doesn't have to be. I just feel like media in general is just so like white geared that they're like, well, he's trans but he's white, so it's cool, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, my thoughts were, I feel like the possibility of why that might be is because if it's, you know, you have that logic where if it ain't white, it ain't right. So if you're going to introduce something that's trans which is sort of unknown to people, then perhaps it needs to be white in order for people to actually accept it
or
and
care.
Well,
Yeah.
work your way
Yeah.
back. Finish the thought.
Huh?
Work your way back. Finish the thought. Okay. So you have, who's controlling all of this?
White people.
I love how you just answered. Yes, that's the correct answer. And it's the unfortunate answer, and it is also unfortunate that I don't think anything's gonna change. I know that the strike just ended, but I had so many friends who like were in it who are like, you know, we need to also be able to, you know, get our chance to produce and have our chance to be creative and have our chance to shine, because from what we saw during the strike, obviously media has not been fun. It's been pretty shitty, and the rest of the world right now is going through a shit ton.
Yeah.
I know that right now, if you were to explain our very much first world problems to what's going on, you know, the other side of the country right now, that's the least of their concerns.
The least of it, their concerns.
Sure.
It is, and honestly, the thing is that I don't even see that as a war. That's an extermination of a whole people.
Mm-hmm.
Genocide is, you know, not even a strong enough word. That's extermination.
Mm-hmm.
And so I look at that situation happening, and I look at my city right here in Los Angeles that is exactly that same size, and it's the scariest. There is no scary movie scarier than this. There is no scarier movie than knowing that the people who run our country are nowhere near as bright to be able to run our country, and yet that's the people that I have to look up to. And I don't see that as a representation to look up to. I see us as living as like the Simpsons episode. You know, like any Simpsons episode where, you know, because in any The Simpsons episode you could find how the adults are fucking stupid as can be. They're misguided and dumb, and, you know, but that's a show. This is real life. And in my real life, I've learned that, again, the scariest thing that I can be is me, right? Because, again, you have trans representation throughout media that has always been very violent. You know, what happened in that one scary movie que tenían, what's it called? Bates guy, que he ended up killing her, the ching, 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 ching.
Oh, I know.
The shower. And
Psycho.
That one.
Yeah.
No podía, no, I'm sorry. But no, that one. And I remember, like, you know, these were different representations that I subconsciously saw. Earlier when you asked me that question, what was your first? And I said Chaz Bono and also that one guy that I went to high school with. But that's not true. Subconsciously, we were always taught, you know, throughout media, throughout all of our lives, that if you dress up, if you're a boy and you dress up as a girl, that's funny. Haha. Make fun of the boy in a girl's dress, you know. And then if you're what we are, you know, then we're delusional women. We need to be like put in a sane asylum. I've heard so many horror stories of just
need to be taught our place by men who want to sit there and sexualize and degrade our bodies and so forth.
So, from the trans perspective, your body, whether you were, didn't matter what, chromosomes or genitalia you were born with, because it really doesn't fucking matter, especially at this point. What should matter is what soul is in that body. Who the fuck are you that you think that you can come around and be my representation? Because you even have people, again, back to, I know I keep sounding like I'm talking a lot of shit about my own community, but you have Caitlyn Jenner type figures.
I don't even, like, that should never not even
but
be
they're in politics, and you can't sit here and tell me, no, we can't talk about it because we have no choice.
You're right, but that's like the worst person.
Though.
She's the worst person to
But yes, I know, that's why it's a disgusting conversation to have.
I think, like, them having a narrative, white trans people, like Caitlyn Jenner, Blair White, like Buck Angel type people.
No idea.
It's like, come on now. Like, we need to give more voices to, like, other people. And personally, like, I try to stay away from, like, that type of media. Like, I want to hear, like, people of color that are trans, like, have dialogue and conversations. To me, that's, like, the most important, because I'm like, yeah, I can, like, understand where you're coming from. And I think, like, another way to, what I was thinking, too, about how can we have people more informed, it's like having conversations like this, like where you have like a podcast like dedicated to wanting to have those conversations and hoping people can like chime in and like actually like take a second to listen and be like, my experience is like, it is different because I'm white, but we're trans. Like, I used to work at, I worked in my last job, I worked for a camp, so like a summer camp, but we were a camp for trans youth, which is pretty crazy. Like, it's not like, it's not like a really common thing, but yeah, it was a great job. I loved working there, and we would have like 80 kids, and we would go ages like 6 to 17. We would go to Big Bear, we rent a campsite, and like they'd been doing this camp since like the 90s, but it first started with youth affected by HIV and AIDS, which is like a big marginalized like community in its own. And then in like 2013 or 14, they created like the trans camp, because they just saw that need, that like trans kids needed that space to be themselves. And they had volunteers that would go that were also trans, and I was really fortunate to be in a position where I was trans, like working with my own community, but still it was like heavily white. Like, all these little kids are trans. Like, we were trying big efforts to get in kids of colors, but I was finding like really hard barriers, because kids of colors, like parents, like maybe they're not out yet, maybe parents aren't as accepting, as like open-minded as like these white parents are. Like, maybe they're too busy to like even learn about it,
the people of color, we're still trying to survive.
Yeah.
So it's hard for our parents to really figure out to help their child when they're just still trying to survive to make it in this white country alone.
And that's something I would talk about too, like where I would say, like, honestly, like, these people are, like, at the end of the day, are just trying to put food on the table. Like, they're not really trying to think about if their kid's trans or not. And even if they are, they don't know what that, like, means and what they need.
They don't have the resources to really find out.
So
they're too busy working 3-4 jobs. Just to make have your child have a good Christmas. They can't take the time to read an article to understand what that is.
So, like, we get, like, a few, like, I think we had, out of those 80 kids, we had, like, 20 kids. Like, not even kidding. That was like the most we could get, 20 kids of color. Like, couple black kids, couple Latino kids, couple Asian kids, and like, I felt really proud about that. I was like, oh hell yeah, we got some kids. And then the volunteers, literally like 5 out of like 20 of them were of color, because it's the same thing. They can't take work off. They can't be in a position to volunteer, because a volunteer position, you're not getting paid to do it. So it's like, who can really do that? And when we had like these white trans people, and I was like, okay, cool, we're like kind of in community, like I'm vibing here. And then we had like these trans people that were like conservative, and like one of them had like the Blue Lives Matter on their backpack, and I was like, no, fuck this, bro. And I like, I honestly was like so close to losing my shit, because like we were like talking about like, we were saying some
I'm still stuck on that thought right now.
Yeah.
They had a Blue Lives Matter?
Yeah, on their patch, like on their backpack, bro. I was like tripping for a sec. I was like, they're white, like from Ohio or some shit.
Oh gosh, people from Ohio.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. And I was like, nah, dude. I was like, I thought I was gonna be in a radical space, because I feel like being trans is like a radical act.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like when you're white and trans, like you can hide behind the whiteness.
The whiteness, 100%.
And that's like what stuck with me, and it like infuriated me to be in a space where I'm like, oh, we're all trans and like radical, I thought, and then suddenly like there's these people, and someone in the group was like, yeah, well, we should be mindful that there's other people here with like more conservative views, and I was like, fuck that.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in a space with like
people. What the fuck is a conservative view at its core, though? It just sounds like really stupid at this point to have labels on how you want to define yourself or how evil you are. Is just. It
was strange. It was weird, and I like honestly like as someone that actually worked for the organization, not a volunteer. I was so like upset, and I was like, "Damn!" Like
that would have fucked me up the entire time there.
Dude,
like
yeah.
saying that would have fucked me up the entire time.
It was weird. It was like something that hadn't like really hit me until that moment where I was like, "Wow, we're actually not like." Like I'd always kind of felt that, but like in the face of it, I was like, "Damn!" Like, all right, we definitely have different battles, and like you don't give a fuck about what I'm going through.
100%.
You know, and I think that's something that's stuck with me, and ever since then, I've been kind of like, yeah, I've been salty about that, and that happened this summer, so it was not that long ago, but I was just like talking shit to like all my other some other queer friends that are like of color, telling them about it, and they're like, nah, dude, I would have said something, like I would have confronted that guy, like this and that, and I'm like,
but then if had you done that though, then you get that narrative. For me especially, if I say anything, that angry black man.
Right. Yeah.
I speak up about something that I should definitely speak up the fuck about.
Right.
But then instantly I'm looked at that angry,
like aggressor.
Angry, yeah, and it's just like, but then I'm just like, do you not get it? Do you not even see what the problem is? Of why, why I have a right to be fucking angry about it? Like if I would have saw some shit like that, I would have definitely like, this is probably my last day. I don't think I could do that.
If I didn't work for the organization, I would have like been gone that day. It was like literally like the first day of camp, and we were there for 7 days. And I was like, and I just like kind of stayed away from them the whole camp. The people that I kind of felt were like the conservative ones, I was like, I don't need y'all as friends. And then I had other trans people and some white too. Like I had like. I really respected them because there had some like white trans folks that were like really strong allies. Like afterwards came up to me and were like, dude, like no, like that's not right. Like, you know, like fuck that. Like and they actually said something throughout that, and they were just like, well, I don't want like white feelings to be like upset. And I can't say that. Like I feel like they like spoke for their own people.
Yeah.
And like I respect the white folks that like can do that and like fucking like have that narrative where it's like, no, that's not allowed here, you know? But I'm not here to do that work for them. So, like, I respected that person for doing that. But we need more of them. We need more of them to be doing that.
You know, I had a conversation with a friend of mine's, and it talks about allyship and how to encourage and get more white people to speak up and to do it. Because the thing is, they do have that luxury, whereas they can be an ally for as long as they want, and then if it gets too heavy for them, they can just walk away from it. Whereas we don't have that type of we like our skin color doesn't just come off.
Right.
We can't change it. So it's like, you know, we don't have that luxury, but we need more allies to know that because you have that luxury, yes, use it, but like stand the fuck up for us. Like speak up for us. Like because your voice is what they're going to hear the most.
Exactly.
They're instantly going to see the color of our skin, and that's it. Like they're not even going to listen to the words that come following out of our mouth. So because you're viewed as that safe individual because of the color of your skin, speak up more.
Yeah, I still don't feel like that burden should fall on like the people of color, like at all. And like I feel like I don't want to get this narrative that like white people bad, like, you know, all that shit. But I feel like where I grew up, there's a lot of white folks, but I also made a lot of white friends because of that. But they were always the folks that were like down to like speak up and down to be like, no, that's not what I believe, or like, you know, questioning other people and like confronting it. Like that's the allyship, because I think allyship and like community and like activism is extremely important, and I feel like we need those folks to like step up so it doesn't fall on the back of like people of color to constantly do that work for these white people, you know?
Yeah. But I mean, the reality is though, as of right now, and that's going to continue to be the case, we're going to have to be the ones to do it. And I mean, we're going to have to be the ones that have to do it 10 times more in order to get things to be equitable, in order for us to even be able to get on that same platform. Like you said, it's the white people's money. It's the white people that have the money to sit here and do all this, to make it happen, to lift up other white people's voices. Whereas we need to encourage our cisgendered people of color to come support us to lift up our voices, because I guarantee we all got a story. It'd be fucking surprising and all amazing as well to hear. And that's what we need in our community in general as BIPOC individuals to lift up. And I mean, you're right. You do have the colorism in the BIPOC community,
for sure,
which needs to end. And that just it like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, just come on.
It's a real thing, dude. It's still to this day, it's crazy. Honestly, like, trans or not, it's just like, yeah, no, it's real. And like, I feel like you get to spaces where like you see it a lot, and you need to like start speaking out for it. Like, I believe in that theory of like, of that rhetoric of being like anti-racist. Like, it's not just enough to be like racism is bad. It's like you need to challenge those ideas head on and like be like, and like get to the bottom of like, okay, why is this happening? And also like we need to like be anti that, because the world is so geared to like racism and like gender roles. Like, you need to be everything opposite of it, but like at all times. And I like really stick to that, because I feel like being a person that's like, yeah, racism sucks, like we hate that, but it's like that's not enough, because it's so passive. Like, you need to like confront it head on and like be aggressive about it, honestly.
Yep, for sure. All right, gentlemen, we had to wrap it up shortly. What are the final words that you would like to share with the world, with our community, you know, to encourage them to, as you're saying, it's not enough to stand up, do more. What's your final message that you would like to deliver to them?
I think regarding a lot of like white trans and like queer folks, I think like to understand like when to like take a seat, and when to let like people of color like speak and give them that space, and also like giving them like that respect and giving them like their flowers now, understanding the work that they've done, and just kind of taking a seat back at times, like when it's like not you who they're asking the questions to, or like taking up all that space. And like, I don't know, I just think they need to be more mindful about that stuff when it comes to people of color that are trans and queer. Like, that's personally what I feel.
I agree. I agree with that.
Yeah, I would just say that you should live your most authentic self, and if you need to take whatever precautions necessary to make sure that you don't get hurt, then that's fine. But I know people who could definitely mistake a step, fall, and still make it look like it was effortless. And I want to be a part of that crowd, of people who, no matter what the circumstances, can get back up, make it look effortless, and do something for this community because of the fact that it's possible. And like, there may be people who are like, I met too many people who are super introvert, and that's cool, but you know, I think that if you have the capacity to be that extrovert, to push yourself, to be in these spaces, to be visible, to take that acting gig, to take that performing gig, to do what you have to, you're the only one who's going to be able to do this, especially now in society where everyone's just killing this off slowly, whether we have talent or not. You know, try to be the best representation you can possibly be. I know for myself, like this next year, I want to throw myself into pushing all kinds of different boundaries that I didn't think were possible for myself. If I would have been like, told myself when I was like a kid and been like, hey, this is the life I'm gonna do, I would have been like, you're crazy. But more power to you, because at the end of the day, like, little kid me would look at adult me and be like, you're actually really cool. Like, damn, I'm impressed. Like, and you know what, I want to continue to be that, not just for, you know, other people in the community, but for myself. And I know that meeting you at that event, I hope I see you at more events like that, because that's my norm, right? But I hope it could be y'all's norm and the norm of other people, that they know that there's the Connie Norman Trans Empowerment Center.
There you go. Shout it out.
At 1001 North Martel Avenue in West Hollywood, California, Los Angeles. Anyways, And there are centers that are trying to be built right now as well by other agencies within our own community. So I look forward to seeing what happens a year from now, what happens in the future in general for our community, because like, again, we don't have to have that conversation about Caitlyn Jenner right now. There could be a different time that we discuss that person, because that needs to be discussed properly and not by people who are going to yell. No shade to the people who have been defending our rights, like my friend Blossom. She's been kicking ass out there, freaking just standing up. Like, I don't know if you've seen when she went off on all those like other people in the trans community who were on the right side. And it's just like a weird conversation, because I'm just like, my friend's doing a great job, you know, the people who I knew that were doing amazing, but the other side of it is just like, I remember you were saying black excellency right there, you say on your hand.
Yeah, black excellence.
And homeboy from that interview said that there's a black supremacy issue. One last thing I want to leave is that anybody who believes that there's a black supremacy issue can fuck themselves. I don't know which camera to look at. There is no black supremacy issue, motherfucker.
Oh, I love it. I love it. That's a good note to live on. That's a good note to live on.
What we have is melanin magic, and they're just jealous. Is
Facts. Facts.
And he doesn't recognize it. He wants to be whitewashed by all these people who are like, no, you gotta what? Was it raisins in your potato salad? What do you want me to do? What do you want? What do you? I don't understand that guy's perspective, but I understand my friend Blossom's perspective and other people in the community who have been fighting really goddamn hard. To the people in the community, shout out again to everybody at the Connie Norman, because that Trans Empowerment Center, again, it needs to be known by more people.
Yeah, facts for sure. And as someone who's been transitioning for 16 years and lived out in California for 10, I didn't even know it existed.
It's beautiful though.
It's newer.
So it is new.
It's newer, yeah.
Okay.
In the last like 2 years or something.
Yeah.
So, okay. I was about to say there definitely wasn't anything like that.
You know who the building is for, though, right?
They said the AIDS.
She was a trans activist.
Yeah,
trans
so
woman.
Back in the 80s, she was the AIDS diva.
Yeah.
My friend Dante Alacastre, I think I'm always bad at pronouncing his last name, but he's the one who did the filming, and then he was in charge of like making sure that like everybody was like, you know, had detailed, you know, description of like what life was like being her friend, and some of those people are still alive, and I got to meet some of them. This woman was fucking legend.
Yeah, she's
who
big
like
activism.
And like not even just like the fact that she was like, you know, big in the way that she wasn't her personality. She was like physically big. And like the fact that she could like look down at somebody and be like, you are not gonna talk to me that way, must have been something so novel to like people back in the 80s who are like, we're just gonna beat up on all the trans girls who look like they just got their estrogen and they're smaller, whatever, we could just kill them and be done with it. But like she's one of those girls who was like, that's just not gonna happen. There were other people during that time frame, obviously, Marsha P, Sylvia Rivera, you know, you have other people who were like definitely going out there. And nowadays, like, I can list a whole bunch of people, but I'd be here for fucking forever listing the women in our trans community who are like, wow, doing so like wonders for making sure that people understand that, especially with black trans women and trans women overall, that they are not fucking objects. They're not to be murdered. They're not to be you know, treated like they're not, you know, people.
Treat them like the beautiful women that they are. Treat them like the beautiful women that they are. Plain and simple. Like, whatever. Man, that's a whole different topic for another moment. That type of hate. But gentlemen, thank you very much.
No, thank you.
I appreciate it. And I can't wait to share this with the world and have more of these conversations, because this was awesome. This was cool. And we're about to do some karaoke, right?
Absolutely. If y'all want to come with me afterwards.
Heck yeah. Alrighty. Oh shit, I keep hitting this motherfucker.